Good morning. Sorry, let me just turn this off. I was hoping to play some music, but it cut out as soon as I pressed record. Welcome back. Thank you for joining me. It's 1:30 in the morning. I'm struggling to sleep right now, so I thought I may as well record something. My ribs don't seem to be getting better. I suspect there's more damage there than I was willing to admit. It's possible that there might be organ damage. I'm start going to hospital because I don't trust them. It's the National Death Service as far as I'm concerned. We'll just see, shall we? So I thought I'd share a few thoughts. I have a great deal to say. I don't know where it is going. As usual. Ad per usuam. I have no idea. These are just rambling midnight thoughts, except it's 1:30 in the morning. Incidentally, I was listening to the Waterboys. I wanted to play a little snippet of their music. It's not just the whole of the fucking moon, you know. Mike Scott, who is the genius behind the Waterboys, has produced like 17 albums. And the whole of the moon is the least of his and output. The whole of the moon, incidentally, is a homage to a particular individual, the lead singer of Pink Floyd, who worked it out at a very young age and disappeared rather quickly. Syd Barrett. Shout out to Syd Barrett. And Mike acknowledges this in the song. Mike is a fucking genius, a brilliant composer and musician, multi-instrumentalist. But he bowed down to Syd Barrett. He acknowledged that although he, Mike Scott, saw the crescent, Syd saw the whole of the moon. Little known fact. The latest album by the Waterboys, On the Cutting Room Floor, is without a doubt one of the finest albums I've ever heard. But you should listen to everything that Mike has produced. He's a fucking genius and an equal of Elgar, in my opinion. I don't have much to say. I don't know where this is going. The ribs remind me of the last time I broke ribs, which was a motorcycle accident in 93, I believe. I was merrily travelling along home from work. I'd gone into work at 5 or so, and was on my way home at just after midday. And there was this is in Felixstowe in Suffolk, Walton specifically. It's an area just north of Felixstowe. There was a petrol station, and travelling along a 60-mile-an-hour road. I was travelling along at 60 miles an hour because, as you all know, I follow the rules. And all of a sudden there was a car there. There wasn't a car there, then there was a car there. This woman had pulled out of the petrol station, and when she was quoted later, she said, "I couldn't see, so I just pulled out." There were cars parked alongside of the road at the exit from the petrol station, obscuring her view, and she couldn't see me, despite the fact that it was a white motorcycle. I had a white helmet and I had my headlight on. It was full daylight, and I'm travelling along merrily at the speed limit, which was 60 miles an hour, and all of a sudden there was a car blocking my path. So I hit it. It was catapulted over the roof. I created a V in the roof of the car where I put my hand out. I didn't have time to brake. I just did that and shattered my arm and left me in hospital for many months. Oops. Oh, it's just gone. Sorry. We'll just have to continue in the dark. I landed on my head and I had a shoey racelet. It was a £350 racing quality helmet and it split in half. So after the accident I removed it on my head, put it in my working arm and went back to her car where she was traumatised obviously from the incident and repeatedly smashed it on her window, windscreen and bonnet, trying to get in and tell her how angry I was that she'd just tried to fucking kill me. Sorry, shouldn't swear. When the ambulance crew arrived, and I didn't call the ambulance crew arrived and I'm still smashing her car with my helmet. They calmed me down and said, "Miss Taylor, are you okay?" I said, "No, I'm very fucking far from okay. I don't apologise for swearing, because this is just what I said." And he said, how are you injured? I said, "I've got a broken arm." He said, "What makes you think you've got a broken arm?" And I held it up. And it was broken in multiple places. It was a Collis fracture, and it wasn't the first time that arm was injured or broken. It looked basically like a piece of string. It was broken in so many places. And he says, "What makes you think you've broken your arm?" I said, "Well, this," and wiggled it at him. And this is an ambulance driver, and he blanched. He actually went white when he saw the state of the arm. Then spent several months in traction in Heath Road Hospital in Ipswich. Which brings me to the story. I suppose I should tell this little vignette. In those days, hospitals were very much different. It was a ward with 8 beds, an orthopaedic ward for people with fractures and broken bones. And we were all male, and 7 of us were motorcycle accident victims. There was one chap who was there for an accident on a football pitch. And it's a long-term thing, so we all became quite close friends, sharing our adventures, particularly the motorcycle guys. I felt sorry for the football guy because he couldn't join in, he wasn't a motorcyclist. And we obviously got to know the staff very well. And one of the nurses confided in me one day, and she said, "Do you know what we call this ward, Miss Taylor?" I said, "No." She said, "Donors." They viewed us as donors because motorcyclists are often quite young, got healthy organs and are near death. So a rich source of organs for harvesting. In those days you could smoke. There was a little outside area where we'd go out for a fag, which was an area, so you'd get people in various states of disrepair with their traction devices or drips, lurching out into this courtyard, which was just off the ward, and we'd all go out there for a fag, and we were all in, drips and gowns. You can picture it, I'm sure. After a few months, I really needed. My girlfriend at the time, Caroline, shout out to Caroline Ward, beautiful lady, wonderful, warm-hearted person. She used to bring me in some LSD, so pass the hours. She visited me every day. We were lovers. She was only 17, I was only 19. She helped me through that in many ways, and I apologies. I was too young and stupid to know what I had. Anyway, this particular day, I'd finally had enough. So I had to plan with the rest of the boys on the ward that we'd escape. We were going to do a breakout because it did feel like prison. So I organised a taxi and we were all going to go to the pub. So we organised this van type taxi, 14-seater thing. And I organised a breakout. And I timed it for shift handover. So taxi rolls up, gets all the boys out of bed, the walking wounded. All 7 of us, actually, I think. Not the football guy. He was in leg traction. We couldn't take him with us. We apologised and said cover. So he gets in the taxi and we travels 300 yards or so to the nearest pub. We had a meal, drank loads of beer. We were only there a few hours. And then came back. However, the nurse who was put on the ward walked onto the ward and said, "Where the fuck have they gone?" And the football bloke was the only one left on the 8-man ward. And he said, "They've gone to the pub." And she said, "What the fuck?" He said, "Well, I don't know who organised it. He covered for me. He knew who organised it. But he was a sterling gent." And so then she rings the pub and says, "Have you got a load of patients of mine in your pub?" And the landlord looked around and he said, "Are you here?" And we said, "No, we're not here." So he said, "No, I haven't seen them." We were all tucking into I think it was a Carberry. And we timed it really well. So before the matron, her boss, came back on the ward, we organised another taxi back, got back on the ward, got back into her beds just before the matron did her rounds. So the nurse didn't get into any trouble, although she had a very nervous period of the loss of her patients. I apologise to that nurse if you're out there now. Sorry. The football guy lost his leg. He was the only one of us who ended up with an amputation, funnily enough. All the motorcycle guys got better, but he lost his leg. And all it was a rough tackle. And complications after surgery left him without a leg. I believe the rest of us got recovered and ambulanced. We were ambulatory when we left. You'll have to look into that. It's a Latin term. Ambulation means you can walk. Non-ambulatory means you can't. So I have several thoughts of guilt about that day. A, we couldn't take the football guy with us, and B, for the worry we caused that poor young nurse who had lost 7 of her patients off an 8-man ward. And it was all my fault. But I don't regret it for that for a moment, because all of those men who are in long-term care really needed to go to the pub, and I took them there. And now I've got broken ribs. It takes me back to that period when I was in traction. Don't ride motorcycles, kids. They're dangerous, particularly on Britain's roads. A pothole might seem an inconvenience if you're in a car. You may have a burst tyre, you may have a broken wheel. There was one yesterday in Branston, famous pothole that took many cars out. It's now been repaired. But if you hit a 4-inch deep pothole on a motorcycle, it's a very much serious offence. I live in fear of my daughter saying, "Dad, I'm going to buy a motorbike," because The roads are far more congested. The standard of driving has plummeted. And there are fucking great potholes everywhere, particularly in Lincolnshire. So, I can't contact my daughters all because of bail conditions, but I do live in fear of my children. It's bad enough in a car, but I live in fear of them ever going on two wheels. I suggest you protect your children the same and don't let them ride. And I love motorcycling, particularly naked. That's a story for another day. Thank you for listening. I'm glad we parted. I've been Carly, and you've been Carlied. Like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you on